Hello, my beautiful Kwababa family, welcome back to the channel. Grab your tea, grab your snacks, because today's episode was one for the books. We are talking about the August 5th, 2026 episode, and honestly, I don't even know where to start because there was so much happening at once. Between the Mackay's family drama, the lobola negotiations, and this whole paternity mystery that just will not go away, my head is spinning. So let's not waste any time, let's get straight into the recap, and then I'll give you my thoughts, my theories, and everything in between. We open the episode right in the middle of the lobola negotiations, and honestly, the tension in that room could be cut with a knife. The families are seated, the elders are speaking in that careful, coded way that lobola negotiations always require, and you can just feel that something is off. Zwelakhe's father is the one leading the discussion on behalf of his side, and he keeps referring to Zwelakhe with this strange formality, almost like he's holding something back. If you've been watching the storyline closely, you'll know exactly why, because there is a secret sitting right in the middle of that room that nobody except a handful of people actually know about, and it has everything to do with who Zwelakhe's biological father really is. The bride's side, meanwhile, is represented by her uncles, and one of them makes a comment that seems harmless on the surface but lands like a small bomb once you think about it. He jokes about how a man should be raised the way his father raised him, and the way the camera cuts to Zwelakhe's face in that moment tells you everything. He's uncomfortable. He doesn't say anything, but you can see it, that flicker of doubt, that little crack in his composure. For a show that thrives on subtlety, this was a masterclass in saying so much without saying anything at all. Now let's talk about the real headline of the episode, Mambokazi. If you've been following this show for any length of time, you know that Mambokazi is the one holding on to this secret like it's the crown jewels. She knows exactly who Zwelakhe's biological father is, and yet every single time the topic comes anywhere near the surface, she shuts it down immediately. In this episode, she is confronted almost directly, not in so many words, but close enough that anyone paying attention could read between the lines, and she still refuses to budge. What struck me most in this scene is how conflicted she looks. This isn't a woman who is enjoying keeping a secret. This is a woman who looks like the weight of it is slowly crushing her. There's a moment where she's alone, just sitting with her thoughts, and you can see the guilt written all over her face. She clearly wants to tell someone. She clearly knows that this secret cannot stay buried forever, especially not with a wedding approaching and a family that is already this tangled. But something, fear, loyalty, maybe even self-preservation, is stopping her. I have to say, this is one of the strongest performances we've seen from her character in a long time. The writers are doing a great job of making us sympathize with someone who, on paper, is actively deceiving an entire family. That's not easy to pull off, but they're managing it because they've given her enough humanity that we understand her hesitation, even if we don't agree with it. We also get more movement in the Kwabe storyline this episode, and honestly, this is where things start to connect in a way that makes you sit up straight. Kwabe has been slowly working his way back into relevance after losing his position, his job, and pretty much his entire sense of identity within the family business. Now we see him receiving support from unexpected places, including, interestingly enough, some backing tied to a business connection that seems to be helping him get back on his feet. But here's the thing that really got me thinking. Kwabe has never let go of the idea that he is the rightful heir to the family legacy. He still sees himself as the one who is supposed to inherit everything, the one who is supposed to be running the show. And the more we see him interact, even indirectly, with the Zwelakhe storyline, the more it starts to feel like these two threads are heading toward the same collision point. If Zwelakhe truly isn't a blood Mackay's, and if Kwabe is somehow connected to that truth, then we could be looking at one of the biggest reveals this show has ever attempted. I don't think it's a coincidence that the show is developing both of these storylines side by side. Kwabe's obsession with reclaiming his position, and Mambokazi's refusal to reveal the truth about Zwelakhe's father, these two things are not separate. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe the show is building toward a moment where Kwab's name is going to come up directly in connection to Zwelakhe's parentage. Call it a hunch, call it pattern recognition after years of watching soapies, but the pieces are lining up. What I appreciate about this episode is that Zwelakhe himself is not being written as oblivious. A lot of shows make the mistake of having the one person at the center of a secret be the last to notice anything is wrong, and it becomes frustrating to watch. But here, Zwelakhe is clearly starting to piece things together on his own. He's asking questions. He's noticing the way people react when certain topics come up. He's noticing that his mother becomes evasive whenever his father, or the idea of fatherhood in general, comes into conversation. There's a particularly powerful scene where he sits his mother down and asks her, point blank, to tell him more about her own history, about where she comes from, about the parts of her past that she's never really opened up about. And she still doesn't give him a straight answer. She deflects, she changes the subject, she gets defensive. It's a masterclass in avoidance, but it's also heartbreaking to watch because you can tell Zwelakhe isn't asking out of idle curiosity anymore, he's asking because some part of him already suspects the truth. This is the kind of slow burn that makes Kwababa so addictive. We're not getting the reveal handed to us. We're watching a man circle closer and closer to a truth that could completely upend his identity, and the show is taking its time letting that tension build. Switching gears slightly, we also need to talk about what's happening with Kwababa, because this poor guy is really being put through the ringer. His father continues to manipulate him at every turn, and in this episode, we see just how deep that manipulation runs. Kwababa is convinced, practically brainwashed, into believing that trust within the family means blind obedience, that proving loyalty means going along with whatever his father asks, no questions asked. This leads to one of the more tense moments of the episode, where Kwababa ends up somewhere he probably shouldn't be, searching for something he probably shouldn't be looking for, all in the name of proving himself to his father. He very nearly gets caught in the act, and the way that scene is shot, the quick cuts, the nervous energy, the way he has to think on his feet to avoid being discovered, really ramps up the tension. It's a small moment in the grand scheme of the episode, but it says so much about how far Kwababa has fallen under his father's influence. He has no real voice of his own left. Every decision he makes seems to be in service of someone else's agenda, and it's genuinely concerning to watch, because you know this cannot end well for him. His wife's frustration with him also comes to a head in this episode. She's tired of watching him bend over backward for his father without ever standing up for himself, and honestly, who can blame her? Watching a partner completely lose their sense of self to please a parent is exhausting, both for the person living it and for the person watching from the outside. She makes it clear that she feels unsupported, that she feels like she's constantly competing with his father for his loyalty, and she ultimately decides she needs some space to clear her head. It's a small, quiet moment compared to the bigger dramatic beats of the episode, but it's an important one, because it shows the ripple effects of this family's dysfunction reaching into every relationship connected to it. Now here's a piece of the episode that I think a lot of people are going to be talking about, the visit to the Sangoma. Every time Zwelakhe crosses paths with this particular Sangoma, he receives the same cryptic warning, that his people are looking for him, that there is a calling tied to his true lineage that he has not yet answered. It's vague, it's mysterious, and it's exactly the kind of spiritual storytelling device that keeps viewers hooked, because we know it's not just filler. This is foreshadowing, plain and simple. The show has used ancestral warnings before to set up major reveals, and I don't think this is any different. The Sangoma isn't just talking in riddles for the sake of it, this is the universe of the show telling us, the audience, that Zwelakhe's real identity is going to surface, and that it's going to be tied to forces bigger than just one family secret. Whether that means Zwelakhe's ancestral lineage is completely separate from the Mackay's family, or whether there's some other twist we haven't even considered yet, one thing is clear: the show wants us to know that Zwelakhe cannot outrun this truth forever. By the back half of the episode, tensions across the entire Mackay's household are at an all-time high. There's a scene where the family attempts to smooth things over with an outside party who has been dealing with the fallout of all this drama, and it does not go well. Words are exchanged, old wounds are reopened, and by the end of it, you can tell that whatever fragile piece this family was clinging to is completely gone. Everyone is walking on eggshells, everyone has secrets, and everyone seems to be one conversation away from a complete explosion. I also want to point out how well the episode balances all of these storylines without any of them feeling neglected. We get meaningful time with Mambokazi, with Zwelakhe, with Kwababa, with Kwab, and even with the extended family members orbiting around them. That's not an easy thing to pull off in a single episode, but the pacing here felt tight and purposeful. Nothing felt like filler. Every scene was pushing at least one storyline forward, even if just slightly. Okay, so let's get into my predictions, because I always love this part of the review. Based on everything we saw in this episode, here's where I think things are headed. First, I think Mambokazi's silence is not going to last much longer. The way this episode was structured, with her being confronted, with her visibly struggling with guilt, tells me the show is building toward a moment where she either breaks down and confesses, or the truth comes out through someone else entirely, maybe even through Kwab himself. I don't think the writers would spend this much time building up her internal conflict if they didn't intend to pay it off soon. Second, I believe we are heading toward a DNA test storyline. Zwelakhe is clearly not going to sit back and wait for someone to tell him the truth. He's already asking pointed questions, he's already noticing the cracks in the story he's been told his whole life, and sooner or later, he's going to take matters into his own hands. When that happens, I expect the results to confirm what many of us have already suspected, that he is not biologically a Mackay's, and that his real father is connected to this family in a much more complicated way than anyone has admitted. Third, I think Kwab's storyline is going to intersect with this reveal in a major way. Whether he turns out to be directly involved, or whether his obsession with reclaiming the family business becomes entangled with the fallout from Zwelakhe's paternity reveal, I believe these two storylines are on a collision course. The show has been building both of them with too much intention for them to stay separate forever. Fourth, I worry for Kwababa. His arc feels like it's building toward a breaking point, either where he finally stands up to his father and reclaims some sense of independence,